Hello and welcome to another episode of the BuildMob podcast. I'm here today with Marc Shakory, former founder of Avocargo, an e-bike cargo sharing scheme in Berlin, and now the founder or co-founder of Coompanion, an AI automation and implementation business that helps small and medium-sized businesses with the implementation of AI and automation. And Marc also works a lot in the mobility and transportation sector with his clients. So welcome, Marc, to the podcast.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me. Really excited about this interview.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. I think it's always great to have founders and builders in the space that actually build something. And it's very interesting to talk to you as well, because you've built something in Berlin with Avocargo that is both hardware and software. And it's great to hear the story, and maybe just jump right into the first question. So when you started Avocargo, basically what made you realize, hey, there is something here. This is something I want to work on. This is something I want. This is a problem I want to solve. This is an opportunity here. So just take me back to the beginning and what the first few days of Avocargo looked like.
Of course. So there's always like different people with different ideas, and then obviously at some point when these people meet, then sometimes great things can happen. And this was also the case for Avocargo. So I wasn't the one with the idea. Through some network contacts, I received a message from a friend of mine who told me, "Hey, you told me that you wanna fund a company at some point in the mobility area. I have someone who's looking for a co-founder, and it's about something with cargo bikes." It's what he told me. Yeah, we actually we met, the guy and I, and Matti was his name, or is his name, and we just met, went for a walk, and he told me about his ideas. And I thought, yeah, that's actually a cool thing. I could really imagine this working, and that there is a need for that. So yeah, eventually we decided to, just like in the design thinking mode that we were both in, we just decided that we will just buy a bike and stand in front of potential customers. So we decided to go to stand in front of a supermarket. I remember it was some very cold winter day in Germany. We were standing there with Matti, I, and his dog Cookie, and the dog was in the cargo bike, looking very cute, and we're waiting for people coming out of the supermarket. And just asking questions like, what do you think about this bike? Would you use it for something? What would you use it for? Could you imagine going grocery shopping with that? Because that was the main use case back then that we had in mind. We didn't think about the whole family and kids transportation use case back then. So we're just standing in front of this supermarket, and the feedback was actually pretty good. And we're really, surprised in a good way, of course. So that was actually the moment where we're like, okay, this is actually, there might be something there. It's not only in our heads, but there is an actual need out there. And then we had some contacts to investors as well. So we started talking to them, and everybody was like, yeah, we think this could work. I think, especially Berlin was in the right place, at that time. So we got a lot of good feedback, and then we got accepted in some accelerator program as well. And then we were like, sure, this is going to work.
This is great. I mean, it's an interesting and obviously sometimes a different approach, going out there, having something physically already present. In that case, it was that cargo bike, and just showing it to people, right? I think, I assume that back then you didn't have anything built in terms of the platform managing the vehicles and managing the bookings or anything else. It was just taking something, putting it in front of people that you hope could potentially turn into customers, and just ask them for direct feedback, right? So I think that's very, very interesting to hear. And then you mentioned you got into this accelerator program, and you yourself as the founding team basically said okay, we have at least enough data to go ahead, right? So how did you then start building everything else that wasn't there when you were standing in front of that supermarket? Everything where you said okay, where do we start now? Because you had the bike, but then how did you then start doing the next steps to actually build a product, a system, and everything else?
Yeah. Yeah, that was obviously a pretty tricky part because, as you just said, like it's the combination of hardware and software. It's not just like focus on one or the other. You have to like both have to like work at the same time, let's say. And back then, like it was more expensive to build apps, etc. So that was the reason why we also didn't have any mock-ups or something like that when we started off. It was just like the cheapest way of just like starting out and see if there's some demand there. The tricky part that we had was definitely that we had to work on many ends at the same time. So the first thing that we did when we saw, okay, there was like quite some interest in that. Um, I was living in a pretty hip area of Berlin back then. So we bought a second bike. We painted them with our branding, and we were like we're putting like leaflets on them and like hanging also like leaflets in some supermarkets saying, you want to sign up for the waiting list for the next e-cargo bike sharing or the e-cargo bike sharing system in Berlin. Just put out the bikes there. Every morning, I put the bikes out on the street, like in the middle of the road, basically, of the sidewalk, so that people really notice them. To create some kind of waiting list and kind of, I don't know, positive vibes around those bikes. And then every day we got like 3 or 4 or 5 people who signed up for those waiting lists. And meanwhile, we try to find a provider for our 10 first cargo bikes. So nobody wanted to lease the bikes to us because we were like two random guys. We didn't even have the company yet because we went to the notary. But in Germany also, I mean, back then it took even longer than nowadays. You have to register for the company and then you have to wait like, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks or something like that. So during that time, nobody wanted to like sign a contract with us. So we had to give our personal liability for those first 10 bikes for the leasing provider, so that we are personally liable if anything goes wrong. And I mean, it's like 2.5K or 3K for a bike. And so there was like the bike thing. That at the same time, we had to buy some smart locks from China. We were also looking for a software as a service provider because, as mentioned back then, it wasn't like vibe coding or anything. So you had to actually buy software from people or build it yourself for like a lot of time, basically. So there was like different angles that we had to work on at the same time. And then in the end, yeah, we had everything together after like I think 2 or 3 months. It was like with shipping from China, there was like this thing with customs, etc. Like getting everything in place at the same time because it's hardware and software from different parts of the world. Was a bit tricky at the beginning, but I mean, eventually you just have to do it because if you don't do it, you obviously nothing will happen at all.
That's true. And can I just ask about like the timing? When did you start with like the first showcases, and what's the time period of like, when did you, start scaling up or building up the business first? What year, what time was that?
Yeah, as that was 2021. So 2020 was the first time I met Mari, and then we started the company early 2021, so in winter. And from like the day, I think it was like at some point in March, and then we had our launch day on June 5th, 2021. I remember this day very well.
Yes. What was so special about that day? I mean, is it like just the excitement of launching, or is that other things happened as well with like all the chaos of a launch date? What made it so special and so
Yeah,
memorable?
yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, by then we were in the accelerator for like a month or so. So we already had like our first employees, like the first 2 employees, like for the operations side, that we had hired. So it was very exciting. Just like it was not only the two of us anymore. Meanwhile, we also found a third co-founder, which was completely necessary because he was the CTO. Because Maddie and I were more the business and operations guys, and Loic, who came also, was the tech guy. And so it was us three plus 2 interns, and also one actually full-time employee. So it was already this kind of team feeling, and it's not only like two crazy dudes just like trying something. It was actually like there was a company behind it, and the most exciting part was obviously the last days before, like with like the last minute changes in the software, etc. And like we just got the software like a week before, like our tenant and everything. So we had to set up everything like many nights. We've been working for that and branding those 10 bikes that actually came with like a lot of foil, and then you have to put the foil on the wood. There were so many bubbles coming out. We did this in garage of Loic. It was like very like this kind of really startup kind of thing. We're like sitting in the garage and like painting the bikes basically. So it was like really, you really had this startup vibe, and everybody was working together. It was really cool. And then June 5th, we were putting the bikes, I don't know, 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. It was a Saturday. We put the bikes on the street. And I just remember very well before we had the 10th bike. So we came with 10 bikes and each bike was on one street corner basically. And before the last bike, the 10th bike was on the 10th street corner, we already had one customer riding with a second bike somewhere. So like in, I don't know, 15 minutes that we were live, people like obviously we send out emails in our like we had this waiting list. So we send an email saying, okay, guys, today's the day we're launching. But it was just like so mind blowing that a guy just came randomly, saw the bike, downloaded the app with the QR code that was on the bike, and just went off with the bike. And this was like, wow, this is crazy. Like there was people really paying for the service. It was like so cool. And this was very memorable. And then obviously we had like a big dinner afterwards with all the like with the whole team, like these 5-6 people that we were to celebrate for that. So it was really really cool. I really have very good memories of that launch day.
I mean, that's amazing, right? So usually with when you build something, you have your family members, your parents being the first customers and like signing up and buying something or booking something or doing something like family and friends. But you put something out there and have like an actual customer walking by and downloading and using it right away. I mean, that must have felt fantastic because it's like a different form of validation, right? So I think it doesn't, obviously you afterwards realize this is not like a full validation of like the business model, but just the initial buzz and the feeling of like someone actually using it that is not coming from a close circle that knows about what you're doing, must have been fantastic that day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. It was not a validation. Like there was no like product market fit in that sense, or there was one person who used the bike. I mean, there were many other people who used the bikes afterwards as well. But I think it's also important that you, as a founder, and also the founding team, that you're all hyped and maybe also slightly naive when it comes to these things. That you see this and you're like, oh my God, like we gotta change the world. This was how it felt in that moment. And I think you need this kind of like internal accelerator which gets you going, and this is what keeps you going also in the long run when things are getting tougher. You have to have this image in your head like I'm going to change the world, and what I'm doing is the right thing here.
Yeah, that's great and fantastic. Hey, can I ask, did you guys set the start date, the launch date yourself a couple of weeks before, or how did it happen that that particular day is your launch date and you need to get ready for it?
Mm-hmm. So we knew we want to do it on a weekend because at that point we understood that also families with kids would really like to use the service. And then, I mean, there was like the critical path with the bikes, the software, and the smart locks, and everything has to come together at the right moment in time. So therefore, it was just some logistics planning, and then we were lucky enough that it was like still kind of, let's say, the end of spring, the beginning of summer, which also, of course, makes a big difference or has a huge influence on bike sharing systems, which are very volatile when the weather is not good, for example. But eventually, it was not our decision. It was just like the fastest that we could, basically.
That's great. And to that, building up to that launch date, I think, getting all the elements ready to have like, to move from like, okay, we have a cargo e-bike that stands where we are standing with the bike in front of a supermarket, all the way to like, this is a system in itself where someone randomly walking by can download the app. And obviously it requires different things on the hardware and software side that need to be ready until then. That building process, how long did it take you? What were the key learnings in that process there as well to just get to that launch date and get ready for it?
Do you mean timeline wise?
And not just timeline wise, in terms of like, because there's so many moving parts that need to come together. And obviously you've done improvements to the system after the launch date, but the launch date in itself is the first time your full product, your full service needs to work end to end in some form or way, right? So, what's some of the lessons, some of the challenges to get you from the lonely bike in front of the supermarket to like a full system, where someone can walk by and book it basically?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like eventually, like we had obviously the challenge of, I mean, we're working on many things at the same time, and we quickly realized we cannot do it on our own, like Marty and I. So therefore, Rick joined very shortly afterwards. So he was taking part of the whole technology and the integration. So like just like ordering smart locks from China, getting them through customs, then adding them, like putting the middleware on them, connecting them to your cloud system, to this software as a service provider, who on their own end first have to create your tenant and has to set up some software, which also back then I think it took like 10 days from the moment we signed the contract with them until we were actually live, or like had the system in place, and we had to configure it ourselves. Before that, we obviously did some comparisons, which software provider is the right one for our bikes, with the ideas that we had for the free floating system, because there were like many software as a service providers out there. Getting those bikes, talking to different leasing providers, finding someone who will actually finance those bikes with the personal liability insurance that they have from our side, as private people, because the company was not set up yet. So it was like many moving parts, and it was like this kind of chicken hen problem that we had everywhere. And this also was throughout the life cycle of Avocargo, was also always this chicken egg problem, especially when it comes to bike financing. So there were like many moving parts, and we had to work on everything at the same time, and getting the team up. We were like applying for this accelerated program, talking to investors, or trying to get some business angels on board. So eventually, I can't recall how we did this in 3 months, because it sounds like so many things to do. But I also remember that I didn't sleep so much in that time. So I think therefore those 3 months maybe were like actually 9 months of working time.
Yes, very compressed and very intense time period to get something off the ground. But I assume, and I can hear it in your voice as well, that the passion you talk about, or how passionately you talk about this whole topic, building something and putting it out there. I think this is where builders draw a lot of like the energy from, and really keep them going as well. But then obviously, as a builder, as a founder, you also need to look after yourself in the long run, because everybody knows the saying that it's a marathon and not a sprint, and you can't just keep sprinting back to back to back until you cover the marathon distance, right? So looking after yourself is very important, and probably we can dive into that a little bit later in the talk. But I also wanna, now that the 10 bikes are out there and the system is launched, what happened next? I mean, what was the conversation after, like the learnings from like people using it, the product feedback, but then also like the business, and obviously the funding environment also playing a role in terms of like how you scale this business. So which direction and what were the next steps, and the conversations that you guys had as a founding team in terms of like, where do you take the business to let it grow as a business?
Mhm. Yeah, so in June we launched with the 10 bikes, and there was like, we were already part of this accelerated program, a really good accelerated program from Berlin, Reactor. I definitely want to mention them by name.
Yeah, good,
And
great.
we were lucky enough also that they had a big network of investors and business angels. So we were like already in contact with them, and we were like, I mean, we launched on the 5th of June, and every second week, basically, we try to do like a little KPI reporting and share it with potential investors, just showing them the traction. Even though it's only 10 bikes, obviously we knew that we want to scale. So 2021 was this kind of gold rush, at least in Germany. Investors were like putting money, like, and like mobility was also very like maybe even overfunded sector industry. It was quite a bubble as well. So we knew that we want to scale to more bikes before the winter. So it was June, and we knew that we want to scale to more bikes even in the summer if it's still possible. So numbers were really good. We had like a lot of utilization, which is like one of the key KPIs in mobility, of course, or in sharing. So we had huge utilization during the weekends, moderate utilization during the day. We were also doing some B2B partnerships or pilots where we tried to get these 1 hour delivery guys also onto our platform, that they would use the cargo bikes to do like grocery deliveries and stuff. We were doing partnerships with big supermarkets. So we had many ideas, and also many ideas that really like the investors or the potential investors also liked. And after like 6 weeks of being operative, our numbers were pretty good, and we were sure, okay, like with these numbers we can get more funding. And then we were pitching basically left and right. And the idea was to get 100 more bikes. So from 10 bikes to 110 bikes. That was the idea. And then again, I talked about this hen and egg problem with financing the bikes. Again, who would
Chicken and
finance
egg.
bikes? A, a chicken, a chicken egg, yeah.
Chicken and egg. Yes.
Okay, yeah, chicken egg. Yeah, in German it's hen and egg. That's why.
Yeah.
So chicken egg problem, and so that's why we decided, okay, how do we approach this? And then eventually, because we were talking about €250,000, that was like basically like the number for only for the bikes, like the volume of the bikes. So who would give that to a startup that just like had 10 bikes with the liability on the two founders or the three founders? So therefore, it was pretty tricky again. And then one thing that unlocked everything was our first investment from a like an institutional investor. And this unlocked many things. And I also remember like getting this phone call, like say with like, okay, we're in. When should we wire the money? Basically, this was like all the knots basically just untied basically. And then we were able to like place the order for the next 100 bikes, also next 100 smart locks. And we were thinking what to do with those bikes, where we were going to put them, like expanding the business area inside Berlin. So many things just unlocked with this one investment. Of course, other investors, especially business angels, who saw, okay, there was like a big institutional investor who did their proper due diligence. They had trust in that. And also it was really a lot easier to like get other business angels on board once this institutional investor was unlocked.
That's great. And so you raised an institutional round so that funding closed, or is there a but to that story where something fell through, or you basically closed the institutional investor round with no
Yeah.
issues?
In the first round, it was without issues, let's say. Obviously,
Yeah.
it was a lot of like, was also like government funded. So there was like a lot of extra paperwork than like regular institutional investors wouldn't have. But eventually this round was a convertible loan. Everything worked out. Let's say the big picture worked out. Of course, you always have like some hiccups, paperwork. Some people want to like change something in the contract, etc. Shareholders agreement with lawyers, etc. So there is like many backs and forths. But I would say the overall picture, everything worked out, and money got wired, and we could order the next 100 bikes. So everything basically fell into place then.
Yeah. And so basically the next stepping stone is like you get to the 110 bikes. And what happened then? I mean, what's the learning then? Was there like a phase where you basically had a good utilization, or you utilized this 110 bikes until you have to go for the next funding round? Or were there some stepping stones in between when the 110 bikes came and you put them out there?
Yeah, I think I mean, it was pretty interesting life timeline there. So we got the bikes and sometime in October 2021. So just there was like some delays, and just after the summer. And as I said earlier, when the sun is shining, people love to go on a bike ride. If it's raining, nobody likes it. And Berlin is unfortunately a pretty rainy city, especially like in winter. It's gray, it's cold, it's snowing. So the bikes came right at the beginning of winter, or at the verge of winter. So utilization went down. Obviously, like revenue got higher because we had 110 bikes, not only 10 bikes. But still, we knew, okay, it's going to be tough to get a high utilization rate. Also, we had some issues with the batteries, with the smart locks, with the cold. I just like didn't like the cold. Basically, like also when it was really cold, the brakes were freezing, so we had to go there with anti-freeze liquid and just like try to work on those bikes. And at the same time, so this was just like the normal winter problems, let's say. And I said back then, it was like this kind of gold rush. And our idea was that throughout the winter, we're gonna like prove the system that we are able to operate bigger fleets. This was like the biggest check mark or checkpoint for the investors. Not actually that there is money coming in, there is revenue being created, but also that we are able to manage the huge operational change from 10 to 110 bikes, which obviously makes operation way more complex. And there was just like, you need to have proper operations in place. So this was our goal for the winter, to then get more funding in spring to be able to order bikes in spring so that they come at the beginning of summer, like the same timeline as when we started. So we kind of survived winter, let's say, and then we placed an order for 100 more bikes, but this time they were like self-designed. So our CTO Loic, there was like his major part with his team to design some bikes which are sharing ready and not like just some random off-the-shelf bikes with a smart lock on them, but really bikes that were made for sharing. So we had our suppliers in China and we're like discussing with them how to create the perfect sharing bike, let's say. And then we placed the order. And there was at the same time that Russia started invading Ukraine. So the whole world changed from one day to the other, not only for the people in Ukraine, but also like we all know the repercussions that it had on the world. And one repercussion that was not so visible at the beginning. First, of course, there was one thing that we had some parts coming from the Ukraine, which then didn't come. But also investors started pushing us towards like, you need to become profitable. You need to have at least 2 years of run rate. We can't fund you. We can't fund any more bikes. So this was like a whole, let's say, strategy that many investors, especially in Germany, were putting. It was away from, we're going to like throw money on everything, on these bubbles of mobility bubble, etc., towards you have to be profitable in 6 months. This was not only for us, but for the whole startup scene was a huge change because everybody was just like, grow, and you can become break even, like, I don't know, in 5 years. And this was also our plan. So we're very far away from this break even point. And this was a huge change, like from like basically overnight. We had to completely change the whole strategy. We had already like ordered those bikes. So like also like the financing plan was in place or the leasing plan was in place. So that was a big change in the second summer, let's say, because I mean, obviously it was in February when the war started. But until like everything happened downstream, it was already like basically spring or beginning of summer. And that was a very tough time because our whole strategy, we had to like rethink everything we were doing, basically.
Yeah. So what happened then, basically? I mean, you changed the strategy. Did you really focus on profitability, or did you then make other strategic decisions after, obviously, when the environment is changing, you given new information, you have to work under completely different conditions. What decisions did you make, and where did it lead you with Avocargo?
So we slowly started like reducing our headcount, of course, because we knew, okay, we can't be profitable, and if all the investors say we're not going to fund you if you can show us how we can become profitable in X months, then we will not give you investment. So we knew that this was like a hard no for many investors. So we tried to adapt. So we slowly reduced our headcount. We tried to like make it even more efficient, putting more on our own shoulders, and because we had less employees. It was obviously like a very tough time because letting go of employees is never easy. I remember like even once like I just had hired a person, and like on his first day, I had to tell him, look, we can't keep you. It was like just a mini jobber, let's say. So it was not like his life depended on that, basically. But still, I hired someone, and like just like on his first day, I told him, look, you don't even have to come. We can't keep you. So we had many of these difficult conversations with employees of ours. We didn't completely like reduce it by 70% or something, which our investors demanded from us, or some at least. So we just couldn't do it, also because like we couldn't do the work all by ourselves. It didn't work. And maybe that's a different topic that we can go to, but like the workload back then was just crazy. I mean, let's put it for afterwards. So we had many strategic decisions that we took. We couldn't undo everything basically. So we can't just like change from like we're going to be profitable in 4 years to we're going to be profitable in 6 months. This is just, especially in hardware, it's not possible because you need someone who takes care of the hardware, who designs the hardware, who manages the hardware. We had operations people. I can't like do all the battery swaps at night by myself. It just doesn't work anymore at a certain scale. I did it at the beginning, but with 100 bikes, you can't do it anymore by yourself. So yeah, we had to take many strategic changes there, many painful decisions. But eventually we knew it is the right thing, even though it didn't feel like the right thing, especially letting go so many people.
Yeah. And so then the business continuity, I mean, did the business continue for a while and you extended your run rate? And obviously, unfortunately, Avocargo doesn't exist anymore today. So at some point, eventually, you as a founding team came to the conclusion and made the decision to shut the business down. So just tell me a little bit in terms of like what was the build up and what was the final straw that made you say like, okay, this is it. We tried our best. We worked very hard, as you said, and but this business in itself didn't work out the way we were initially planning. And what was the build up and what was the final straw for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the final moment was looking at the bank account, just to put it very very simple. So obviously, like we had our workforce, and we were just not able to pay salaries anymore at some point. So therefore, this was like the closing chapter, to put it very simple. The whole buildup was, I mean, I talked about like we tried to reduce workforce, etc. We even like we applied for short-term work because we couldn't, we didn't have like enough like work to do, let's say, for the people, because it was like a strategic decision that didn't or like outside factors that limited our capabilities of working. So we tried everything, and in the end, it was just like the lack of money in the bank to be able to pay salaries, to pay the leasing rates, to pay the software as a service provider. So eventually, this was like practically like the whole story. I mean, we tried it all, and then at some point you realize, okay, it's not possible anymore. And then you fill in these documents for bankruptcy basically, and you hand them over either to a lawyer or you go to the court yourself in person and just like hand them over. And this is basically the closing chapter. And this was, I think, 31st of January that we did that.
2023.
2023, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, got it.
And then there was like a 3 months period where there was like a manager, like a government manager, let's say, who comes in, insolvency manager, who tries to find solutions. Do we try to like get other investors in, or do we try to sell it to another company? So obviously we had like these thoughts ourselves already, like trying to find someone to buy the company or finding new investors. So it was nothing new that he tried, but eventually we tried this for 3 months, which is like the legal framework or timeline in Germany, until the end of April. And then at the end of April, we saw, okay, it's not going to work. And then we had to completely cease the operations, basically.
Okay, got it. Obviously, we talked about like the journey and the build up and the passion and the work and everything that you put in there. It's, closing moments. How did you experience that personally? Now with a little bit of like hindsight, how do you look back to that period and what it did to you, and what are some of the lessons that you learned from that as well?
Yeah. So I would say the last 3-4 months, when you kind of see the guillotine like in front of you, like chopping your head off at some point, it's a pretty mentally challenging time, I would say. So also for us, I mean, like you have like this weight of you feel this responsibility for your employees. I mean, we had like at the high times, we had like up to 30 employees, including like all working students and interns. Also like the burned money of the investors, also like family and friends were also investors in our company. So you kind of feel this mental load, that you feel responsible for something even though you have to tell yourself like everybody did this voluntarily. You didn't put a pistol on anybody's chest to give you money, so it was their free decision. Also, like signing a contract with the startup, like people know that there are like some kind of related risks with that, but still you still feel this responsibility and this mental load. Also, of course, it feels like this kind of personal failure. I remember very well, like when we signed those contracts on the 31st of January, we signed this paperwork for the bankruptcy, and like us three co-founders, we went for a beer and just like, I don't know, it was just silence. We were like looking, not even looking at each other, just like looking at our beer and thinking, okay, like everybody had their own thoughts. Was, I think, one of the most silent meetings I ever had with my co-founders. So it was a pretty sad moment for sure. You rethink what went wrong and what kind of decisions have you taken which were not the right ones. Did we do this right? Did we do that right? So there was a lot of like self-doubt, to be fully honest. But I think you have to go through this process. I think the good thing on the other hand is we had nearly 20,000 customers in our database, and obviously we wrote like a goodbye email, like, hey, we're going to cease operations, thanks for everything, blah blah. And we had so much good feedback. Like people wrote so cute emails saying, hey, we loved what you did, super sad to see you leave, we love the bikes, our kids knew the bikes by name because every bike had a little name on it. And our kids always want to ride with Svenja or with that bike. So we really made a difference in our life. You made our lives easier. So this huge positive feedback and those really cute words in those emails really was like, that was like the best thing that could happen in that moment, because you really felt you did something good, and you left something in their heads. And actually, what was also really cool is we were able, in this community that we were also able to sell off the remaining bikes, because the insolvency manager asked us if we could help him with that. So we were able to put those eventually 200 and I think 11 bikes that we had into the hands of this community that we had built over 2.5 years. And still nowadays, when I walk through the streets of Berlin, you see those blue bikes. People even like kept the branding on. So you see like Avocargo bikes still riding through Berlin even today, which is super cool. And every time I see a bike, it's like this kind of heartwarming feeling I get. And we see and we feel that, and we get this feedback as well, that we left something good there, that the service was really helping people in their daily life. So this is, I think, the best that could happen after such a negative experience, let's say, of closing down a company, to still see afterwards the legacy that you left somehow. And this is a really cool thing that I really enjoy when I walk through the streets of Berlin still.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing to hear. You are an entrepreneur, you are a company builder as well, and obviously for Avocargo, the company building part unfortunately didn't work out. But you're also a builder, building a product, building a service, and yes, in the long run, you need to make the numbers work, make the business work and make the product work and everything else. But it's amazing to hear the feedback from your existing customers that it was loved, right? And there was something to it, and you had something, but unfortunately, like the business environment, the funding environment, and maybe in hindsight also, you would say like your own experience, made it unfortunately that, the business side didn't work out, but you built something on the builder side that you can be tremendously proud of. And, which leads me to my next question in terms of like, given that you have this fantastic feedback, what, if you had a chance today, what would you do differently? And how would you build it up and set it up differently? If you would do it differently, it might also be that you say like never ever again, and I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't touch it because I realized, no, it's not going to work.
Yeah. What would I do differently? So I think one big learning for myself was, I was working way too much. So we talked about this earlier. Of course, you have some responsibility, or you feel this responsibility, but I was for months, I don't know, changing batteries at 3 a.m., like going through the city with my own cargo bike and like changing batteries, repairing bikes, because we had to cut down on headcount basically. I was doing customer service. People were calling me like in the middle of the night. Yeah, the bike is not unlocking. What can I do? Because I was COO, so my responsibility was like the whole operations part. Obviously, we were like trying to divide it on many shoulders. But very often it just you had like these 7 days a week of working, and even working at night, and during the day you do like presentations and stuff. So it was like really too much at some point. And I think many founders, especially first time founders, I think at least told me this, that you completely only focus all your energy on your work, on your business, and family and friends, your personal health also. You don't do your exercise anymore and stuff. So I think this is something that I would really do differently now. Set up the company differently, put way more people in operations, have more focus, not do everything at the same time. Of course, sometimes you cannot not do everything at the same time, but then strategically speaking, choose one path, especially when your resources are highly limited. Choose one path and just go full on in that path, instead of like trying to go full on 5 paths at the same time. Um, and then, of course, nowadays, like building softwares has become so much cheaper. I mean, I think we want to talk about this in a second, because that's my current business as well. Setting up even more automations, like using AI for so many things. I could really imagine that this. I'm sure that this would cut out so much of the workload that I had back then. So there was like so many things we could have done differently with a tech stack that you're able to have today. And yeah, also, I don't know, like also some investor choices you always like think about, okay, like, was this the right investor? Was that the right investor? Did they help me enough? There is some cap table decisions that you have to take as a founder, giving away like your own votes, your shares. And these are things that, in many dimensions I would do differently, because now I know better. But I think back then, I did the best, or we did the best that we could. We took the decisions we thought were right with the knowledge that we had at this point in time. So I don't regret any of these decisions. But it's just obviously now I would do it completely different.
Yeah, that is great. So then you mentioned it already. What are you doing today? I think it's good to now, find the arc, and you've closed the Avocargo chapter, and now it's, now you're working in Coompanion, basically helping other businesses with AI and automation. We know each other also through that work as well, because your business helped some of the businesses that I'm currently building, getting things off the ground. And so we have a close working relationship there. But tell me, what excites you about like the current work that you're doing, and also the difference that you see building today versus building 2, 3, 4 years ago, which seems not that long ago, but suddenly so many things have changed in between.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so why I became CEO of Avocargo was because I'm a process and efficiency nerd. This was always like some part of my of my character. So when we closed the Avocargo chapter, through a friend of mine, Robert, who is now my co-founder with Coompanion, he was also COO of another mobility company, and we were always like exchanging ideas and also like helping each other out here and there in our businesses back then. And we were like kind of always talking the same language and trying to implement automations wherever we could, wherever it makes sense, to just make things smoother and have less friction, and just be more efficient in our daily work. So when we seized the operations with Avocargo, a few weeks or months later, he also left his startup, and he asked me if I would be interested in offering what we have been doing for our own companies to other clients in the mobility scene, or also in other industries. And because I needed my sabbatical after like seizing Avocargo, I told him, look, I can't promise you anything right now, but it sounds super interesting. I would love to do that, but give me some time to recharge my own batteries. So during my sabbatical, we kept in touch. And he started this by himself, like getting some clients and doing exactly what he was doing for Anymove, his the startup where he was COO. Um, and when I came back from my sabbatical, like I don't know, in the course of a few days or weeks, I was like, okay, Robert, let's go. I'm here, I'm ready, and my batteries are at 150%. Let's go. So this was the moment where he also showed me some new tools. I mean, back then, for the sabbatical, AI was just coming into, there was like mid of 2023. I think ChatGPT launched like end of 2022. So I started like planning my sabbatical with ChatGPT and stuff. And like, I feel like people were asking me like if I'm crazy back then. And nowadays, nobody questions this at all anymore. So there was like a lot of like technological changes. Also, then Lovable got launched. That we had like ways of like creating things out of nowhere in such a short time that was really, really impressive. And he was showing me these kind of things. Also, my ex co-founder Loic, who's also a huge tech nerd, also showed me some stuff. And like the whole automation and AI, it just interlinked so well with each other. And because we had like this experience from our own startups, like how to actually make operations work better, for me was a no-brainer to join this track with Robert. So basically, yeah, in the course of a few weeks after coming back from my sabbatical, him and I were like this team working on these projects. So yeah, I was just stunned by the whole technological evolution, and how this can improve so many things. And as I said, the potential is unlimited. You can create things out of nowhere, and nobody would have thought about this huge improvement in technology like 3 years ago. Nobody would have believed that. But nowadays, you can build tech. You can build the tech in the speed and the time frame, and at a cost at a fraction of 3, 4, 5 years ago, which is really, really impressive to me. And I think it helped so much for our own startups, which really makes me so like full of energy to be able to help other companies achieve those crazy improvements in efficiency, also in terms of effectiveness, because they have time to do other things, because like AI or automations are doing like the manual, tedious work that you usually have to do when you're a solopreneur or like a small company where resources are always limited. So yeah, I feel like the space with automation and AI has become so unlimited in the very sense of the word. It's just super exciting to be able to help our clients to achieve this, to also like to get those whole advantages out of it.
Mm. No, it's great to hear. It's like, the passion for it certainly comes through when you talk about it. And I want to link the need for the sabbatical and reflection that comes with it from from the time, obviously, closing Avocargo and, deliberately taking time to recharge your own batteries. You've been recharging e-bike batteries before, but you need to think about your own self, and, the body powers the business. So you need to look after the body. So this, the sabbatical, just share a little bit. What did you do? What were some of the key reflection points for you? And then, that you came back energized to Coompanion, and maybe some other founders or builders that are currently going through similar experience or have gone, maybe some advice in terms of like, how do you get yourself back up from having to close down a business that you were very passionate about to doing it all over again?
Yeah. So I think the first step that I took before leaving on sabbatical was I deleted LinkedIn from my phone to definitely not have anything to do with business, because I really wanted to shut off completely. And I mean, eventually, of course, I mean, sabbatical, usually people go traveling. I did the same thing. But a major part of this travel was also staying in places for volunteering projects. So I'm like teaching English to kids in Tanzania. I was like digging out pineapples in Sri Lanka on a farm. I was picking coffee on a coffee farm in Uganda, like working with the people like locally, living a very easy life, and just seeing how different things can be if you're not on your computer all the time, and how refreshing it is to be outside, and how, I don't know, working with people and doing something good, which is not super related to business, of course, like these coffee farms that live from selling coffee, the pineapple farm from selling pineapples, let's say, but just like it was just a completely different experience from being like 12 hours on your computer talking to investors about funding for projects and calculating ROI, etc. It was completely different world. And this was a very refreshing and grounding experience for me. And I also wanted to take this back when I'm back home. So not only like being refreshed and having seen many parts of the world, which I probably would have not seen if I wouldn't have gone on this sabbatical. Um, Also knowing that it's a pretty big privilege to be able to do that. I think that's also very important to know. But then being super grounded with people like living in huts without windows, etc. Like just like everything is open and you have to go to the street to get your canister of water to take a shower, for example. These are things that they just change you. They do something with you. And this is also one of the reasons why now back in business, I'm back on my computer most of the time of the day when I'm working with AI and automations. But I'm still trying to like do this kind of this idea of giving back, of supporting NGOs or nonprofit organizations is also something that is very dear to my heart, especially after those experiences that I had in many different countries, where nowadays also with Coompanion we try to do pro bono projects for NGOs or nonprofits who don't have the financial resources to pay consultants, to pay AI experts, etc., to implement solutions which actually help create a better world. I really love what I'm doing with automations, also in business and mobility and renewables. In all the industries that we are, I really enjoy doing what we do. But at the same time, and I'm really happy that Robert and we have the same perspective on the big picture of the world. Let's say that we want to give something back and do something good. This is also something that we're very, very proud of, that we're able to do these pro bono projects for like these, let's say, organizations that help me, let's say, shut down, and do like this kind of hands in the dirt kind of work, and work with people in many other countries. And this is kind of my way, or our way of giving back. And this is something really dear to my heart that I took out of this sabbatical, and I try to keep going also on the long run. And yeah, so this is also very important to me, and this definitely changed me during the course of the sabbatical.
That's great to hear, and I think this is a great closing statement to wrap up this podcast. Thank you, Marc, for your time. I really appreciate that, and for all the valuable and insightful lessons that you've shared with us today. I will certainly provide a link depending on the platform to Coompanion, so that people who are interested know how to get in touch with you. And yeah, thanks again, Marc. I really appreciate it, and it was an awesome podcast with you.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thanks for like all the interesting questions. It was really cool. And if you know someone who like an NGO or a nonprofit organization who could benefit from our help, please let me know.
Will do. Thanks a lot, Marc. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Take care. Bye.
Bye.